In 1976, Canadian singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell was at the height of her studio mastery and musical experimentation when she released her eighth studio album, Hejira, and from that album, the track Furry Sings the Blues. Already kind of like a morning tea type vibe. Let's see where the lyrics take us.
Old Cleo Street is coming down. Sweetie, snap out, board it up now.
I love these like these chord progressions. It's like D minor to F, yeah. Acoustic, just kind of a few instruments just kind of coming together to form the tonality.
And Eccles the tailor and the shine boy's gone, faded out with ragtime blues.
Yeah, at A minor, I think with like an open string in it. Let's not fall behind on the lyrics because I think this is going to be somewhat convoluted. Old Beale Street is coming down. Sweetie's snack bar boarded up now. And Eggles the tailor and the shine boy's gone. Faded out with ragtime blues. Okay, so I guess so far we're talking about times past. The old times and like the faded remnants of another era.
And he's cast in bronze, and he's standing in a little park with his trumpet in his hand like he's listening back.
Oh, I hear that harmonica. That is played by Neil Young. Yeah, and the arrangements, other than that, bass by Max Bennett and lead guitar Larry Carlton, and she plays everything else. Most of the songs on this album have pretty just like trio or quartet arrangements with her like acoustic guitar and vocals.
To the good old bands and the click of high-heeled shoes, old Furry sings the blues.
Okay, let's faded out with, okay. Handy's cast in bronze, and he's standing in a little park with a trumpet in his hand, like he's listening back to the good old bands, and the click of high-heeled shoes. Old Furry sings the blues.
Up in his bed with his dentures and his leg removed, and Jenny's there for her kindness and Furry's beer. She's the old man's angel overseer.
Let's see, what chord, I was trying to make out the chord right there. It's like an altered A. Well, it's changed now, but yeah, it kind of those like acoustic chordal like where you kind of take a chord and like maybe open a string or something.
Chops glitter like gold tooth caps.
I'm thinking maybe like an open second on A.
In the gray decay, they chew the last few dollars off old Beale Street's carcass. Carrion and mercy.
Well, she's stretching out her voice kind of in the plaintive and yet emphasizing certain words, like stretching out the vowels, like in the final words of each line. Let's see. Old Furry sings the blues, popped up in his bed with his dentures and his leg removed. Okay, we're talking about an old man. And Ginny's there for her kindness and Furry's beer. She's the old man's angel overseer. Yeah, so I guess we're dealing here with a geriatric blues man in the mid-1970s and who had been quite the performer back in his day, presumably like 50 years beforehand, like in the 1920s. Let's see. Pawn shops glitter like gold tooth caps. Okay, I'm just gonna do the lyrics piecemeal.
And silver sparkling drums, cheap guitars, eye shades and guns.
Those like open, those open E strings really kind of.
Aimed at the hot blood of being no one.
It's like you hear them through several different chords. It's like there's a consistent like open string that seems to persist throughout these passages that gives it kind of a drony, kind of almost hypnotic effect in a way.
Down and out in Memphis, Tennessee, old Furry sings the blues. You bring him smoke and drink and he'll play for you.
Yeah, it only deviates when we hit that D major.
Stay muttering down inside show spiel. But there was one song he played I could read.
Yeah, here we're in A, but there's a second in there. I'm hearing a B. I love the counterpoint right there. Oh, that bass line right there, and the way the acoustic guitar just kind of interjects into it.
Murder at the New Daisy. The old girl silent across the street.
Okay, let's catch up with the lyrics. Pawn shops glitter like gold tooth caps. In the gray decay, they chew the last few dollars off. Old Beale Street's carcass. Someone unpack that last line. Carry On and Mercy, blue and silver sparkling drums, cheap guitars, eye shades and guns, aimed at the hot blood of being no one. Down and out in Memphis, Tennessee. I guess these are just kind of like visual impressions of the scenery, of like the remnants of old glory. Old Furry sings the blues. You bring him smoke and drink and he'll play for you. Let's mostly muttering now and sideshow spiel, but there was one song he played I could really feel. So even at his advanced age, years past his prime, he can still convey, he can still resonate on certain numbers.
She's silent, waiting for the records beat. Silent, staring at her stolen name. Diamond boys and satin dolls.
Oh, that's an interesting line. Let's see. There's a double bill murder at the New Daisy. A double bill murder. I'm thinking a performance. The old girl's silent across the street. She's silent waiting for the wrecker's beat. Silent staring at her stolen name. Diamond boys and satin dolls. Bourbon laughter, ghosts, history falls to parking lots and shopping malls. As they tear down Old Beale Street, Old Furry sings the blues. He points a bony finger at you and says, I don't like you. Everybody laughs as if it's the old man's standard joke. But it's true. We're only welcome for our drink and smoke. The old girl's silent across the street. She's silent waiting for the wrecker's beat. Silent staring at her stolen name. W.C. Handy, I'm rich and I'm fey, and I'm not familiar with what you played, but I get such strong impressions of your heyday. I'm thinking that last verse must just be about kind of street urchins, like the sights, like characters that you see along somewhat rundown streets that have had their heyday. Like that person, could have been I'm not going to speculate. Well, I'm thinking it could be like a streetwalker. It could be a pantomime. It could be a lady at the corner. It could be one of those people doing like pantomime for change or something. W.C. Handy, I'm rich and okay, I'll say the fourth verse for after.
Bourbon laughter, ghost history falls to parking lots and shopping malls.
Yeah, the strings that you hear in this on her acoustic playing is really captivating. The tonality that she creates out of it, that dun 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 dun.
As they tear down Mobile Street, old Furry sings the blues. He points a bony finger at you, says, I don't like you.
The way that smooth bass kind of feeds into it too, into the tonality, does.
Everybody laughs as if it's the old man's standard joke.
Joni Mitchell had become very aware of bass playing around this time, and but more on that in the other track.
It's true, we're only welcome for our drink and smoke.
Oh, I love the way that dun, 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 I love the way that those two tonalities intercepted. I just. It's coming up right here.
W.C. Handy, I'm rich and I'm fake, and I'm not familiar with what you play, but I get such strong impressions of your heyday.
Okay, W.C. Handy, I'm rich and I'm fey, and I'm not familiar with what you played, but I get such strong impressions of your heyday. Okay, now she's speaking to the subject of the song. She's like as a relatively young woman who was not alive during his time, like in the 20s or so. But she's sensing that he was quite the figure back then. Looking up and down Old Beale Street, ghosts of the dark town society. Okay, yeah, ghosts, as I was alluding to earlier, you know, come right out of the bricks at me, like it's a Saturday night. Okay, I think that my initial impressions are panning out here. They're in their finery, dancing it up and making deals. Furry sings the blues. Yeah. Why should I expect that old guy to give it to me true?
And up and down Mobile Street, ghosts of the dark town society come right out of the bricks at me, like it's a Saturday night. They're in their finery.
They're in their finery. I like that line, yeah. Why should I expect that old guy to give it to me true? Fallen to hard luck and time and other thieves, while our limo is shining on his shanty street. Old Furry sings the blues. So she's quite the woman of means at this point. She's like a well-to-do woman who's like straight into this kind of rundown area of town that's seen its day, but she's like sensing that it was once a lively part of town, that it was once the epicenter, or you know, and kind of sees in this old man that he once was a man of glory. She can, and that it still kind of resonates from him in some ways.
Dancing it up and making deals, Furry sings the blues. Why should I expect that old guy to give it to me true? Falling to hard luck.
Falling on hard luck. There's some poignant lines that if you know how to piece them out, there's some of these lyrics, the metaphors, I'd like to be able to probe into a bit deeper, but there's no specific page devoted to this track on Wiki. And no one has offered their interpretations on Genius, so...
And other thieves, while a limo is shining on his shanty street. Old Furry sings the blues.
Well, that harmonica really is giving this song kind of dimension. Let's see, was Furry the character, this old guy, like a harmonica player back in his day? Maybe that was his instrument. Oh, there's an article about this on her own website. Oh no, maybe it's just okay. They talk about it somewhat. Yeah. There's a lengthy thing. Let's see. There's an electrical wire hanging down in front of bluesman Furry Lewis's small olive green duplex. It drapes across his front porch, and Furry is so worried that he can hardly get drunk and have fun with the people who have come to visit. This is from February 1977 Rolling Stone. Somebody call up... okay. Age and cataracts have dulled Furry's eyesight, though not his feisty spirit, and his public appearances have been whittled down to a cherished few, but Furry's still got the world at his bedside. Okay, so this is actually someone who... Yeah, I guess I've heard that name before. Yeah, Furry Lewis, American guitarist. Yeah, I'm not necessarily an expert on 20s era bluesmen, but let's see. Born 1893, died 1981. A Memphis bluesman. Let's see. Lewis played his slide-driven talking guitar blues with the father of the blues, W.C. Handy. Okay, so that on Beale Street in the early 1900s. Okay, yeah, that puts it into context there. So it's about her impressions, I guess, of meeting this person, or maybe she did, maybe she didn't. Let's see. He stares at the surrealistic photo on the Hejira cover, but then she goes and puts it all down on a record using my name and not giving me nothing. I can't stop nobody from talking about Beale Street because the street belongs to everyone. But when she says Furry, well, that belongs to me. Okay, getting into some things. Nah, I'm afraid that's not how it works. But, okay. Anyway, yeah, it's about a subject. Anyway, interesting take, kind of impressionistic take with, dense metaphor, but yeah, I was able to pretty much piece it together, not coming to the table, not quite knowing that it was actually about a living subject at the time, a living legend in blues circles at the time. Yeah, Furry Sings the Blues by Joni Mitchell from her 1976 release Hejira. Let's hear another track from the album, Black Crow. Already kind of a smoldering, slightly fractious sound going on, impressionistic.
There's a crow flying, rocking ragged tree to tree.
That bass could only be one man.
He's black as the highway that's leading me. Now he's diving down to pick up on.
Now her singing is much more, well, she's expressing herself much more, with much more volume.
Something shiny. I feel like that black crow flying.
Okay, let's introduce the credits to this track. As some of you probably already know, the bass on that is Jaco Pastorius, and lead guitar Larry Carlton, and other than that, it's just her I guess some electric guitar, because I haven't really heard a solo yet. Um, and that doesn't sound like Larry Carlton's type of work, right?
In a blue sky.
Okay, that's Larry Carlton. This arrangement kind of reminds me of like some well, it's rhythmically strong, though completely absent of drums or percussion, reminding me of bands that use that kind of arrangement with this sort of loose, sort of atmospheric sound shaping approach that was popular among self-press and small press UK acts during the early 1980s. Like, I don't know, a name like Ilis and Gaza crosses my mind.
I took the ferry to the highway, then I drove to a pontoon plane. I took a plane to a taxi, and a taxi to a train.
Hear those harmonic notes? Boom.
I've been traveling so long.
From both of them, from both Carlton and Pastorius.
How am I ever gonna know my home when I see you again?
Yeah, she's a bit more urgent sounding in this track.
I'm like a black crow flying.
Like a black crow flying. To think, before there was Black Cow, there was, just a year before that, there was Black Crow.
In blue sky.
Here Carlton's like kind of searing tone at times. It kind of seems to presage that kind of searing, trebly tone that that Daryl Strummer developed with Phil Collins, like during Phil Collins, on some of Phil Collins' post-punk type numbers, like In the Air Tonight, that kind of sound.
In search of love and music, my whole life has been.
I gotta find out what this track is about, of course. But until I bring the page up.
Illumination, corruption, and diving down to pick up on.
The word diving seems to be an operative word, the way she repeated it. Okay. There's a crow flying, black and ragged, tree to tree. He's black as the highway that's leading me. Now he's diving down to pick up on something shiny. I feel like that black crow flying in the blue sky. Okay, so she sees a black crow. It's quite a sight of, like, you know. And, like when you see a bird up close, particularly maybe a bird that you don't see very often, and it's one of those sights that you remember. And so she kind of, her own situation, she sees the crow as kind of like, almost like a metaphorical representation of. I took a ferry to the. Okay, more lyrics in a bit.
Every shining thing, just like that black crow flying.
I should. I was going to. As I alluded to earlier, Joni Mitchell was becoming more conscious of bass playing around this time, and to the point where she she approached Jaco Pastorius, and they really bonded musically. She felt that the bass playing in the earlier, like in the late 60s and earlier 70s, had been okay. Let me find that part of the article.
Blue sky.
Okay. After recording the basic tracks that would become Hejira, Mitchell met bassist Jaco Pastorius, and they formed an immediate musical connection. Mitchell was dissatisfied with what she called the dead, distant bass sound of the 1960s and early 1970s, and was beginning to wonder why the bass part always had to play the root of a chord. She overdubbed his bass parts on 4 of the tracks on Hejira and released the album in November 1976. Yeah, and I definitely agree with her, although she's... maybe this article is kind of putting words in her mouth when they include the early 1970s into that, or maybe she just hadn't discovered it by then. But I mean, by the early 70s, of course, we had some really, frontal, very assertive bassists on the scene who were taking lead oftentimes. But that's a topic for a whole other video. I mean, well, by the early 70s, I mean, John Entwistle was well established. I mean, Chris Squire was on the scene, yeah. So many people I could mention.
The morning after being up all night, I looked at my haggard face in the bathroom light. I looked out the window and
So I guess Joni Mitchell is giving us that kind of scratchy sound.
I saw that ragged soul take flight.
Because I swear I'm hearing like 2 rhythm guitars. I'm hearing like electric and acoustic.
A black crow flying in a blue sky.
And Carlton's giving us more of that serene tone. I love the way those bass notes, those fretless bass, just, and the way they interact with that serene, kind of shapeless guitar. That just, it's all just pure tonal color. I guess there's elements of like ECM kind of on this too, like filtering in. Wow, that's quite a note. That was quite an expressionistic note there. Let's see. I took the ferry to the highway, then I drove to a pontoon plane. I took a plane to a taxi, and a taxi to a train. Oh, this is getting kind of confusing. Quite a sequence of different vehicles. And, I've been traveling, her transportation from point A to, well, point D, point E. I've been traveling so long, how am I ever going to know my home? Oh, it sounds like she's kind of a vagabond. When I see it again, I'm like a black crow flying in a blue sky. Okay, so she's singing from the point of view of like a vagabond, like a 70s era, kind of post-hippie wanderer. Yeah.
Ooh, flying in a blue sky.
Oh, the beauty of those notes colliding. Yeah. In search of love in music, my whole life has been illumination, corruption, and diving, that word, down to pick up on every shiny thing. So dive, yeah, I knew it. Diving is kind of the operative word of how she connects to the Black Crow, of how she feels like a kinship, of how she feels the Black Crow represents her way of life as like a drifter, a wanderer, a kind of counterculture type, kind of hippie, gypsy type of lady. Diving down to pick up on every shiny thing, just like that black crow flying in a blue sky. So she spots things on the road, on the streets, and picks them up, and probably has a collection of just assorted things that she's found. sounds. I looked up at the morning after being up all night. I looked at my haggard face in the bathroom light. I looked out the window. Yeah, that's kind of what it's like. I mean, well, I can kind of relate to some of that, the haggard face. I instantly, I'm starting to think of the time that I was living in my car for 6 months back in 2003, and taking bird baths in like fast food restaurants and stuff. That kind of like fractious, like hear that bit that we just heard. I'm not an expert on Larry Carlton's history. I mean, I've heard things here and there. I've worked through a couple of his albums. I see his credits in many places, but yeah, I didn't know that he got this experimental. I guess offhand, I just tend to think of him and Lee Ritenour is like two peas in the pod, basically the same kind of you know, I guess, well, like light legato type players, light smooth jazz types. Although I don't know how often they've interacted on the same record, or I wonder if they're too similar with one another to. I was kind of wondering, are Lee and Larry friends, or are they just too similar to get along with one another, or to appear on the same record? Yeah, that was Joni Mitchell with Black Crow from her 1976 album Hejira. Yes, her 8th studio album. Yeah, writing her artistic, you know, pinnacle between like 1974 and 1977. Yeah, those that period representing the height of her experimentation, lyricism, and studio mastery, and just these kind of like hypnotic arrangements she would weave with select musicians in the studio. Yeah. For more rubies and sapphires from the catalog of Joni Mitchell, see the directory of albums by Canadian artists linked in the description below. Like and subscribe and follow me on social media, and leave a comment if there are any observations you have about the two songs we heard, the layers, the instrumentation, the sonic nuances, and the most importantly, the lyrics. Yeah, very steeped in metaphor, both these songs, but I guess quite self-evident in the end what both of them were about. And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear-traveled trimaximalist, signing off.